Hey everyone, this is Professor Illuminati again. In this series of tutorials, I'm going to give you the basics of building. And the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to create a prim, how to move it, resize it, and rotate it. So I'm going to hop out to the virtual world here, and here is my avatar. And to do building is essentially what you're going to do is go down to the bottom of your screen in the bottom ribbon of options and tools, and one of those buttons is called the build button. And let me just close this out. And if I click build, I'm going to get this menu that looks like this, and I'm going to have a series of shapes up here, three-dimensional shapes, and we call these in the virtual world prims, so primitive shapes. So again, you can see the cube is your default option. You've got a triangle. Sorry, not a triangle. You've got things from a pyramid to a cylinder and to a sphere, various primitive objects. You can use any of those for building here. And if you look around the world, you'll notice that pretty much almost everything that you see around you is made up of prims in some fashion or shape. But really, we're just going to focus on the cube. That's probably your most common prim that you're going to put down, and that's again your default. So let's start with that one. So I've highlighted this, and essentially when I hover my mouse down on the ground here, you'll notice it looks like a magic wand here. So that lets me know that I'm about to drop a prim on the ground. Now I could put the prim anywhere, it'll show up, but ideally it's usually best to put it forward from you. Keep in mind, don't hover your mouse right on your avatar, because sometimes that'll attach it to your avatar, and then you'll have to right click and detach to get it off. But just so you know, just try and put it outside of you, and then just click on the shape. Now you'll notice that you have this menu of options here, and there's really a lot to it. To be honest with you, you can do a great deal of building and even scripting and doing lots of different things with these objects. So we're really just going to try and stick with the basics for now, and then if you want to get more into it, you certainly can do that. But what we're going to focus on is this area up here. And you can see that by this little checkoff box says position. And when that's clicked, that means we can click and drag the arrows, the multicolored arrows, and move our object around. We could even put it in the ground if we wanted to, although we don't want to do that. And then again, you can use your red arrow to go along this axis. You can use the green arrow to move it back and forth towards your avatar, and you'll notice that there's a grid that shows up when you do that. So that kind of gives you the metric equivalent of the real world. So you can kind of use that as a guide when you become a more advanced builder and want to make really nice structures. So within this menu is your position button, and that's again your starter area, and you can move your prim around anywhere you want. Now if you should click off of your prim and you should lose the editing privileges, you can just click back on it. You should be okay. But if by chance you close this box and you wonder, oh no, I'm not in editing mode, you can get it back just by right clicking, and from the pie menu choose the word edit, and that'll get you back to this menu that you were on, and it'll also give you an opportunity to move it around. So that's the first step. I'm going to change the name of this. It's always good practice to put a different name in there, because if you make a bunch of primitives and you don't change the name of them, when you bring them into your inventory, you may not be sure which one is which. So it's always a good idea. So I'm just going to call this practice prim, and that'll show up in my inventory when I'm done, and I'll explain that in a second. So now the next step is to click on the rotate option. So if I click this rotate button, now notice I have some dials up here. Notice it's 0, 0, 0. This is my rotation area, and think in terms of your geometry class, and think of things like 360 degrees, think of 180 degrees. So if I were to say take my blue circle, I can actually rotate this, and if you watch the scale up top there, so there's 90. So I'm going to about 90, and then again, you can just continue using the blue circle and click and drag your mouse over it. You can actually rotate your object. You can also rotate it using the red circle and the green circle. So if I just kind of zoom it around, and again, take a look up above so you can kind of get a guideline of how far you've done it. Again, in most cases, you'll want to rotate yours by degrees that you know of. There's 360, 180, all that sort of thing. So I'm just going to go to 360, or at least try and do my best here. Just as a quick trick, so I can't get it right on 360, I can also just go into the object here, and if I go into rotation, I can change the coordinate right here to 360, and that will bring me back to where I want to be. Okay, that'll move my Prim back to coordinates that I can handle, because just like in real world building, you don't want to be off when you start building, because if you're off your degrees and your levels, it could not come out right. So that's the second thing we can do. We can rotate just by clicking that, and we'll bring up these circular controllers. And then the last one is stretching. And stretching looks a lot like, say, if you've ever used a PowerPoint or, say a Word document program, you can actually stretch an object by grabbing what we call these little handles here. And notice there's multicolored handles. There's green, red, and blue, like our other controls, but there's also some gray handles. And if you click on any of the gray handles, you're going to expand or contract your object, but it's going to be proportional. So the cube is going to stay a cube. It's not going to change anything else. However, if we choose, say, one of the multicolored objects, it's actually not going to keep its proportion. It's going to shrink it. So if I drag that down, notice now it's changed. It's no longer a cube. It's more of a rectangular prism. So, and again, I could shrink it both forward and backwards. So I can do a variety of different things using the color tab. So that gives me a little more flexibility. It's going to change the size and the dimension. And then again, if I click the gray, it'll keep that proportion. And again, notice I've got some scale options there as well. And I can also change the, numerically, I can change the size of the diagrams within here, this sizing option. Okay. So those are 3 of the options you can do to resize and reshape any of your objects. So that's kind of step number 1. We'll talk to you on the next tutorial.